All right, there we go. In true Sooner Scoop fashion, welcome in from the SoonerScoop.com studios. Eddie Radosovich, George Stoya here. And, the news is out there. We reported it earlier today. John Finley and Seth Littrell going to be named co-offense coordinators in Norman. Brent Venables has come to this decision. And, George, I think that everybody probably wants to start here. They've seen everything that we put on SoonerScoop.com. And for SoonerScoop.com YouTube subscribers, a special promo going right now for $1. $1. That's all you got to do. 4 quarters. I'm sure some of you are out there are pretty familiar with quarters. We're talking about the actual coins, though. Just 4 of them. $1, 2 months. Promo code OU1. OU1. That is OU and the number 1. 2 months, $1. Pretty easy. You would have known about this about 2 hours ago, 2.5, 3 hours ago when we put it out there, and when we've done some reporting throughout the afternoon.
You've done some reporting. You've been on top of this.
I feel like I did something. I got something out of my journalism degree today.
Yes.
But Seth Littrell, John Finley, George, why?
I think continuity. I think that's number one
that
reason.
That seems to be the buzzword for a lot of people out there.
Yeah, and we talked to some folks. I know that you, like I said, you've been really on top of it from the start. But talking to people inside the program, they did some external research on some other candidates across the country because that's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to do their due diligence. But at the end of the day, when you have somebody like a Seth Littrell in-house, a John Finley, who they feel really good about going forward as a coach, they felt that in terms of what they've got going right now, which is a really good thing, coming off a 10-2 season, the offense was pretty good for most of the year. I know people want to be upset about some of the inconsistencies at times, but they finished top 4 in total offense, 7th in scoring offense this season. So they've been incredibly efficient. They feel like they have the right players in place. They don't want to lose any of those guys. I'm sure that was part of the conversation in terms of keeping somebody like Jackson Arnold in-house. We'll get to him in a minute, as well as some of these recruits. So at the end of the day, it came down to what's going to keep this thing most stable. And look, when you go out and you make a hire outside the program, right, which they could have gone and done. We talked about it, Eddie. This is one of the most attractive jobs in the country. They could have gone out and tried to hire the big home run hire. Maybe they should have done that. We'll see. But I think that they wanted to keep the staff together. And if you go 100%. Out and you hire somebody that's wants to bring in their own staff, all of a sudden you're talking about replacing everybody on this offensive staff or a good chunk of it. So I think that they said, hey, look, we've got a good play caller in Seth Littrell. I do believe he's going to be the one calling the plays. You can elevate a John Finley, who they think is a rising star in the industry. And it just makes a lot of sense for them in terms of keeping this thing on the same track that it's been on.
I want to talk about Jackson Arnold. Obviously, that's going to be something that, everybody wants to know is, what does he think of it? And that was something that you had reported on, talking to some people that are close to him. It seems like this is not only something that he is approved of, the right way to say it, or signed off on. I don't know which way you would throw that, but at the end of the day, Jackson Arnold's going to be the quarterback for Oklahoma in 2024. He's the face of the face of the program, the face of the future of the program. And when you combine that, and again, the word continuity with the guys that they have coming back next year, we'll see what happens with Jalil Farouk. I kind of get the feeling that he might come back to Oklahoma. He has the opportunity to head to the NFL draft, but you look at the wide receiver position, you look at the guys that he's going to have to work with, there's a lot to like, and I think that kind of speaks to the culture of what Brent Venables' program is. It speaks to, I think what they want this thing to be a continuation of the first 2 years, and obviously, everybody knows, year number 1 of Brent Venables, not great, 6-7, but they bounced back with the 10-2 year. I think a little bit of that you could fall at the hands of the offense in losses in Lawrence and Oklahoma State. I know we've been rather vocal about that here on SoonerScoop.com YouTube page, as well as the Eskridge Lexus postgame show, as well as the unofficial 40. But you look at what they have coming back, you think about the continuity within the group, and I think that, we've talked so much about the continuity within the offensive side of the ball with, obviously the play callers and obviously the players, but you think about also the coaches, and you think about Bill Beatembo, you think about DeMarco Murray. I know that we're going to get into them more here in a little bit, but it seems like there's a preference, I think you could say, that they would like to work or continue working with Joe John Finley, as well as Seth Littrell, who Bill Beatabo already has an established relationship with. And this is way before the first 2 years that Seth has been back with the OU program.
Yeah, no, I mean, Seth goes way back in terms of his coaching tree. When you talk about, his first opportunity was, coaching with Mark Mangino at Kansas. And I mean, that was his first college job as a GA. And you look at where he went after that. He goes on, he coaches running backs at Texas Tech under Mike Leach. That's kind of where he got the air raid offense, which you're going to see more of now with Oklahoma. And then he goes on, coaches at Arizona for Mike Stoops. He was the offensive coordinator there for a couple years. Then he went to Kevin Wilson, another name Oklahoma fans will be familiar with. He was the offensive coordinator at Indiana. And then he was the offensive coordinator at North Carolina under Larry Fedora for a couple years. And then, obviously spent, 7 seasons at North Texas as the head coach. And a lot of people at North Texas thought he shouldn't have been fired when he was last year. So, I think he's definitely a proven guy. He's somebody that, like I said, has built a really strong relationship with a lot of the quarterbacks. He will be coaching the quarterbacks for Oklahoma moving forward. He sat in a lot of the quarterback meetings this year. He was heavily involved with the QBs. You even look at the summer camps when Michael Hawkins, the 2024 commit, came in. Kevin Sperry, the 2025 commit. I've talked to people around them as well, and they also feel very comfortable with Seth Littrell. So again, when you talk about continuity and having someone like Littrell, who I know he has,
I promise we're not going to say continuity every other sentence, but
we might.
That was the key word that kept coming up over and over and over again.
Yeah, no, it is, and I think that's why they made this move. It was Brent's belief that that was the best direction for this program moving forward.
Let's talk about Jackson Arnold. I think that was the number one thing. And even it kind of was my question was when you hear that they're going to promote Seth, when you hear that they're going to promote Joe John Finley, you go, okay, what does the quarterback think of it? What does Jackson Arnold think of this move in terms of what this means for the future of the offense that he's obviously going to be the guy with?
Yeah, no, Jackson's on board with this. I think he would have been on board unless they went out and made some crazy hire.
Sure.
Jackson Arnold wants to be the quarterback at the University of Oklahoma, and the point to me that was made about him is, at Denton Guyer, he had several different head coaches, several different offensive coordinators. This is nothing new to him. He wanted to play quarterback at OU, and of course, he's close with Jeff Lebby.
Right.
I mean, Jeff recruited him to OU. But he also knows he's taking the reins of a blue blood program, and he has that comfortability with Littrell. Like I said, they got to know each other. He worked with a lot of the backups this year. So did Matt Wells. Sounds like he might be up for a head coaching job somewhere else. But Jackson is committed long term to this thing, and obviously you want to go out and you have a great year next year under Littrell and Joe John Finley. But he is definitely 100% in moving forward from what I understand.
I think it's also kind of interesting, and it goes back to this continuity idea that because of the move and everything that's going into it with, obviously Oklahoma's move into the SEC next season, I don't think that you want to go out. Say you go out and get an offensive coordinator, the big name guy that everybody, I guess wanted from the outside looking in. And not only do I think that this is a move that's going to be appreciated inside the locker room, George, but I think it's going to be something that a lot of people within the program wanted. Former players, people that know Joe John, people that know Seth. At the same time, though, I think that this is also a move you don't want to look up in a year from now, and all of a sudden, as Jackson Arnold is possibly entering his second year in the SEC and his second year as starter at Oklahoma. All of a sudden, he's having to learn a third offense for the third time in 3 years.
Correct.
That's why they wanted to keep the language what it was. Who knows? I'm sure that Seth and I'm sure that Joe John is going to have tweaks to the offense that they're going to kind of make their own or separate themselves from what Jeff Lebby was doing in Norman. But at the same time, it just keeps coming back to the big C word, not the 4-letter word, continuity.
No comment. No, yeah, it does. And again, I think that Littrell's somebody that obviously Brent thinks very highly of. They go way back from his time at Oklahoma, and he's somebody that they really brought in to help kind of with game management. And you saw that improve this year with the help of Matt Wells and Seth Littrell, two guys that have been head coaches before and are very highly thought of. So it just makes a lot of sense. And look, I get you want to go out and you want to hire the Will Steins of the world, Ryan Grubb from Washington, Stein from Oregon, like I said, Andy Ludwig from Utah. And so those are some of the names that have been thrown out there. Sean Lewis, who's going to end up being the head coach at San Diego State. But again, when you go do that, you risk guys either leaving, or you risk staff members leaving, which I don't know if we've said this yet, but in our report, we also report it's the expectation that OU's not going to lose any staff members, and they feel really good about this staff. When you talk about Bill Beatenbow, what he's been able to do at Oklahoma for so long, you mentioned DeMarco Murray and the class he's bringing in at running back, and then obviously Emmett Jones.
And what he did in his first year was incredible with the wide receiver
exactly.
group.
And so I think that they feel like they've got a really good thing going. Why mess with it when you have somebody in-house that you feel that can do kind of a similar thing with the offense? Why change things up?
And I think it's also important to note that, you look at DeMarco, you look at Bill, you look at a number of these guys on the offensive side of the football, outside of maybe Emmett Jones, who spent his first year in Norman this past year, they all know each other. And I think that does that help move the football on Saturdays? Is it ultimately going to be what fans look at? Obviously not. It's going to be the scoreboard and what they're putting up points-wise. But, again, you look at what they have coming back, you think that Jackson Arnold's going to be the type of guy that everybody around the program thinks he's going to be. The excitement level is still there for him. You look at, Jaden Gibson or Nick Anderson or some of these, Jaquez Padaway, some of these guys that are a little bit younger within the program that took steps, particularly the two big-bodied guys in Nick Anderson and Jaden Gibson. And there's a lot to be excited for with this offense moving forward. And then you also look at what Seth Littrell has done, at previous stops. He's a good offensive mind, and he also has plenty of experience when you look at kind of his coaching tree. He's coached with damn near everybody that Oklahoma fans would be familiar with, whether it be Bob Stoops, obviously playing for him, being a captain, or,
Mangino,
whoever, Mark
Leach.
Mangino, Mike Leach, Mike Stoops for a time at Arizona,
Larry
also Sonny
Fedora.
Dykes, Larry Fedora. Like, the guy's worked with a lot of people, and it seems like each person that we've talked with or connected with in the last 24, 48 hours since this opening came up on Sunday night officially, very, very highly regarded.
Yeah, people love him, and he's you watch him just walk around, Eddie, and this sounds
he's
weird.
A badass.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, and he's got some swag to him. He's definitely a guy that
I've said it before. He's going to be keeping Copenhagen
Yes.
well in stock.
Yes. So he's a very likable guy. I think he'll be well liked on the recruiting trail as well. I mean, that's something that we could probably dive into. Him, coaching in the DFW area for so long. He's going to be very connected to coaches down there. I don't think he'll have any issue recruiting quarterbacks to Oklahoma. I know there's some people out there, well, he's never coached quarterbacks, so how he's going to recruit quarterbacks. At Oklahoma, that's not a difficult thing to do. You point to Jenkins with the Heisman Trophy. So I think that
there was a lot of people too that they look at basically like you're hiring a guy that's never coached quarterbacks, right?
Yeah.
They just had an offensive lineman coaching quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And Jeff Lebby did pretty damn well, right?
Yeah. And again, a lot of these
and
guys.
I'm not saying it's easy to do either.
No, and one of those things is Seth Littrell and a lot of quarterback coaches these days in college aren't teaching mechanics with these guys. A lot of these guys have come in very well polished, especially at a program like Oklahoma. You're more so teaching them about how to read a defense, things like that, which Seth Littrell is going to be able to do. I mean, go look him up on YouTube, and he does film breakdowns. He did at North Texas, and the guy's a genius. And what he does in the air raid, you're going to see them run the ball a little bit differently than what they did with Lebby. You're not going to see them spread receivers out all the way to the hash marks like they were this last year, but you're going to see them do some different things in terms of how they run the offense. I don't think they'll do as much tempo. I know that's been a big gripe among the fan base. I think you're going to see them slow the game down a little bit, run the ball a little bit more, especially with him being, his background as a running backs coach, a fullbacks coach, tight ends coach. He believes in the run game, which I think obviously is why he
understands the importance.
Exactly. And him and Bill Beatenbow see eye to eye in terms of what they want to do.
I thought that was a pretty important point, produced by Kerry Murdoch. Put it out on Twitter earlier this evening. We probably overlook or maybe don't give enough credit to the relationship between Bill Beatenbow and Seth Littrell, going all the way back years
Texas
now
Tech.
to Texas Tech, in which I think that they speak the same language as far as what they want to be able to do offensively, and especially with the guys in Bill's group up front.
Yeah, I mean, when Littrell went to Texas Tech, Bill was actually the running backs coach. Hard to believe Bill Beanbo being the running backs coach, but he was. And Seth Littrell
you don't think Bill can make any moves in the hole?
I'm not
Have
sure.
you heard that, Bill?
But Seth took over running backs, and Bill moved to offensive line. They become very close friends. Bill's 51 years old. Seth is 45. I believe they have a lot of stuff in common there. But worked together at Texas Tech under obviously Mike Leach for a while. Then Bill went and worked for Mike Stoops at Arizona. Littrell went the same route. So they've worked together before. They're very close friends. I even think Bill had a large hand in Seth coming on to staff here at Oklahoma this last year. So I think that's really important when you have a play caller and an offensive line coach kind of thinking alike. And I wouldn't say that wasn't always the case, I would say, with Jeff at times. I think that there was maybe, sometimes that everybody didn't see eye to eye in terms of what they wanted to do on the ground game. But, I think that they're going to see eye to eye in terms of what Littrell wants to do, running the ball, whether it's outside zone, gap scheme, that kind of stuff that Oklahoma really got known for with Bill being the offensive line coach.
I think as somebody that grew up in the state of Oklahoma, just like you, you look at Seth Littrell, and I think especially for those early 2000 Oklahoma football teams, like he was the guy. I mean, a fullback on that team. His father, Jimmy, was a two-time national champion at Oklahoma, 74-75. You look at Seth and the career that he had at Oklahoma, winning a national championship, a 4-year starter, a captain. I mean, it goes all the way back to high school that he was a two-time state champion wrestler at 189 in Muskogee. They don't come as tough, or nobody comes more tough than somebody like a Seth Littrell. Let's talk about the coaching staff, just in general, because it was something that we reported on, and it was something that we had put on the Crimson Corner as well here over the last 48 hours, was the fact that Jeff Lebby made a run at some of these guys.
Yeah, no, he did. He went after Joe John.
And I don't blame him for that.
No, I mean, Jeff's
you're trying to put together your own staff.
Right, and he knew, I mean, it also is a compliment to what Oklahoma's got going in terms of their staff, but Joe John certainly was somebody that he wanted to hire. They're close friends. We've talked about that. Everybody knows that they're very close friends, and that's part of why Oklahoma promoting him to a co-OC role makes a lot of sense to keep him here. I think it would have been a similar role for him at Mississippi State. He obviously chose Oklahoma. I think he wants to stay in Norman, those sorts of things. But yeah, I mean, he was throwing a lot of money to go to Mississippi State, chose to stay at Oklahoma. We don't know the money yet here at OU.
Sure.
Those details I'm sure will come out in the next couple of days, but Bill Beatenbow.
And I should say, Jeff Lebby made $1.9 million a year ago as Oklahoma's offense coordinator. I don't think that one of those guys is going to just be given that 1.9. No. And this is purely speculation on my part, but I would imagine it probably gets to a total somewhere in between of that $2 million, and maybe you separate it between the two. Completely conjecture on my part.
Yeah, and Joe John, his contract, I actually have it in front of me. He was making $520,000. This last year as the tight ends coach. I would assume that'll get closer to $1 million.
Sure.
So he's going to maybe double his salary staying in Oklahoma. But, Lebby also made a run at Bill Beatenbow. I think that he wanted to try and bring him to Mississippi State. Obviously, he's staying. DeMarco Murray, that's the big one that we heard as well, that there was a serious run at maybe trying to get DeMarco to come and be a co-offensive coordinator.
Sure.
It's indicated to us he's going to stick around in Norman. I don't think he ever really wanted to leave. And I know he's also very close with Seth Littrell, and I think that he also wanted this to happen.
I think it would be fair to say that there might not be more, two guys that are more in the corners of Joe John Finley and Seth Littrell than DeMarco Murray and Bill Beatenbow. I think that would be very, very fair to say.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I know that we've both been kind of hearing.
And not
those
to say
things.
that Emmett Jones feels differently. I know I feel confident in saying that those two were very prominent in saying we would like to see these guys be the guys.
Yeah, and to your Emmett Jones point, Emmett's only been here 1 year.
Sure.
And these guys have a relationship, dating back. I mean, Bill Beatenbow's now been here 10 years.
It's crazy.
It's crazy to think about.
Crazy.
DeMarco's been here, 4?
Mm-hmm.
And again, like I said, he's very close with Littrell as well. Having, again, that bond of playing at OU, I think means something. And I think him and Joe John obviously overlapped as well as players. So I think it just, again, makes a lot of sense. We've got a lot of people in the chat here being like, oh, why did OU settle for this? And I get that point. Sure. I
think that there is a general sentiment out there about that. This is going to be a tough sell for Brent Venables to the fan base. Two things. I don't think he cares,
No.
to be honest with you. I truly don't. And if you don't think that he's doing the best for what he thinks is going to be the best for the program, given the continuity, given with what Jackson has done or hasn't done or is going to do, and then everything else that goes into this offense.
How about going into the SEC? I mean, how much do you want to change everything up?
I know this doesn't mean a lot to a lot of people, and it's going to sound like we're propaganda, just throwing it out there. But at the end of the day, Oklahoma had a pretty good offense a year ago.
Yeah.
They finished, as you said, number 4 in total offense. They finished number 7 in scoring offense. Like, it's not as bad as people want to make it out to be, even though anything anybody's going to remember about this team is what they weren't able to do offensively in Lawrence and in Stillwater.
And I'm also interested to see, one thing that we were critical of Jeff Lebby this year and last year too was game situation play calling, situational play calling.
Sure.
And that's something that I think as a young offensive coordinator, Jeff struggled at because he's never been a head coach, where maybe Seth Littrell is better at that in terms of he knows the game flow. He understands when you're up a score or you need to go score, or when to be aggressive, when not to be aggressive, maybe when to slow down, when to speed up, those sorts of things, because he's been in those moments as a head coach. And we know how Brent is with the defense. He is so zeroed in on the defense sometimes. Not to say that he's unaware of what the offense is doing. I think he was especially better at that this year. I mean, you saw the offense slow down at times that a year ago they wouldn't have.
Sure.
But I do think that you can hand it to Seth now, and he maybe better understands that scenario than maybe what Jeff was doing. Now we'll see what, innovation, creativity Seth can do as a play caller coming up with his offense. But I do think maybe in situational football, Seth Littrell might be a better option than Jeff Lebby is.
Interesting. So Bill Beatembo, the offensive staff, Bill Beatembo, DeMarco Murray, Emmett Jones, Joe John Finley, Seth Littrell. That's your 2024
there's no other
staff unless something changes in between now and
which
then.
They always could. You never
Sure.
know. Jobs come open that you maybe don't expect to come open.
Yeah, maybe Mike McCarthy gets fired and DeMarco wants to be the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys. I'm just throwing something out there.
Stuff like that, or you have a offensive coordinator position open up somewhere else because someone gets hired as a head coach, and maybe Emmett Jones is thrown out there as a possible candidate, something like that. That could always happen. But as of right now, the anticipation is to keep all of the offensive staff.
Good news there. Some bad news for Oklahoma is they are going to lose some quality control guys, some support staff guys. It sounds like to Mississippi State, as you reported in the report posted on Tuesday night.
Yeah, no, Phil Lodeholt, who everybody would remember, obviously former offensive lineman here at Oklahoma, he's expected to follow Lebby as well. Tanner Schaefer, former quarterback at Oklahoma.
If you watch an Oklahoma game, you see him. He's kind of Joe John Finley's right-hand man. Signaling.
I think he signaled in a lot of the plays.
Signaling an offensive plays.
I believe he was was he quality control this last year?
I believe that would be correct. The Zen brother as well, I think.
Yeah, Tanner's the man. Matt Holacek, he's been labeled as, I guess, the quarterback whisperer. He's definitely somebody that...
If you watched Oklahoma warm up before games, if you saw him at some of Brent Venables' football camps, he did a lot with the quarterbacks, and he was one of the guys that we had talked about on, I believe, one of the practice reports, or maybe even on Monday in the instant reaction to Jeff Lebby leaving, that he had come with Jeff Lebby from Oxford.
Yeah, and he's somebody that's very close with Jeff. I expect him to probably be a position coach, so he's going to get an elevated role there. And then Benton Doobie as well is another one that we've heard. He was in an analyst position this year. I think he would probably be maybe in a similar role, maybe an elevated role at Mississippi State.
And I would say that, for the Oklahoma fan out there that goes, what bunch of traitors that they're going with these guys, or they're going with Jeff Lebby, congratulations to these guys. This is the next step in their coaching journey. It's a lot like some of the guys that ended up going to Los Angeles with Lincoln Riley. I don't know how you could blame somebody that is trying to get their foot into the door, and especially something like this where it's a great opportunity with an SEC program in Mississippi State.
Yeah, and these guys, a couple of those guys that we listed, I anticipate they're going to be position coaches. So you go from, quality control or analyst role to being a position coach. That's a big step up.
Sure.
And some of the guys that maybe are going from quality control to analyst, or analyst to quality control, I'm assuming they're getting raises. Their roles are going to be bigger, whatever it is. There's a reason they're leaving. And like I said, a couple of those guys, they're Oklahoma guys. So it's not lightly that they, get up and move, and, you wish them the best of luck. And I'm starting to believe Jeff's going to have some success there at Mississippi State. Maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit, but
you just want more cowbell.
I just want more cowbell, baby.
It will be interesting, and I'm just looking through some of the comments here, and it's funny. Somebody says DeMarco sucks, or Joe John sucks, because you look at the position group and kind of the questions that they had in 2020.
Here's what I'll say
Eric
about
Gray
that.
was the first person that would have said DeMarco Murray helped him with his development.
100%. And look, we don't always know what's going on, and I think Joe John would be the first.
It's a lot like this hire just in general,
right?
Or the hires.
And I think Joe John would be the first one to put his hand up and say, hey, I missed on maybe some portal guys or whoever to come in and help. And they didn't have much. I mean, I think Caden McIntyre could help him this year. He gets hurt, I think, in the first game, breaks his hand, at tight end. And maybe he should have gone out and gotten more portal guys. But you also have to look at what he's doing on the recruiting trail. They're bringing in Devon Mitchell, who, by the way, just quote tweeted our report and said, let's go, with a lot of lock emojis and heart emojis. So he's obviously fired up about Joe John being the OC. So
there it is. Very nice.
Yeah. So that's always good news. And he's going to be a
interesting emoji usage. That's a lot of them.
That is a lot of them. I'm not a big emoji guy, but obviously that's the in thing.
You weren't a big emoji Gibson guy either. Is that right?
That's incorrect. I love Emoji Gibson. Good 3-point shooter.
Interesting. Okay. I thought
we're talking about
something else.
Right?
Huh?
We're talking about Gibson that played basketball.
That played basketball.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Good 3-point shooter. But yeah, no. So you bring in a Devon Mitchell. Sounds like things are trending the right way for Nate Roberts.
Well, and that kind of goes into the continuity thing, does it not? That the 2024 and the 2025 class, I think that, it's probably not reason number one. It's probably not reason number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever. There was some continuity that they wanted to keep within the 2024 class, especially as we sit now, 22-ish days away from the start of the early signing period coming up on December 20th, as well as, the work that they've done and the work that Josh has outlined on the 2025 class, which, whether you want to believe it or not, is probably about a third the way through already.
Yeah, no, and again, I think that had a large part of why they ended up doing this. They feel like they've got a lot of momentum on the recruiting trail. And also Joe John, again, going back to him, you look at what Braden Willis did. I think a year ago people have been like, oh, yeah, Joe John, look how he developed Braden Willis, who I think would be another person to say, hey, he's done a great job. You mentioned DeMarco. Look, I don't know what happened with the running back room this year, but since DeMarco's been here, he's done a really good job at recruiting running backs and also developing running backs. You look at Kennedy Brooks. He ended up being a great running back. I think that was DeMarco's first year at OU. You got Eric Gray, who he developed. I think Gavin Sawchuk is going to be a stud. And he's bringing in the best running back in the country in Taylor Tatum. So people might be critical of the staff at times, but I do think in the grand scheme of things, a lot of them have done some really good stuff.
And I don't think it's Joe John Finley's fault that they simply have had a bunch of issues at tight end in terms of injuries. And I certainly don't think that the tight end coach is having some of his players get hurt in practice, whether some of these people out there believe it or not. So it'll be interesting. I mean, I think that as we've talked about, you keep coming back to the word continuity. You keep coming back to the idea that I think that there is a lot of support within the locker room. I mean, we're not there every day. We don't know what Jeff Lebby and Seth Littrell bring to the program just in terms of the day-to-day inside the locker room. But it seems like this is a hire or hires that is very supported. And, frankly, I don't know if anybody gives a damn inside the program of what a lot of you think out there. Because the same people that are bitching and complaining right now will be the first ones that say this is one of the best offenses in the country the first time they put 65 on whoever the F they're playing in the non-conference.
And look, if everything goes wrong next year, you can clean house and do a whole offensive coordinator search next offseason. And obviously that's not what you want to happen, but you can do that. I think that this is a deal where they can always go out and Brent can say he screwed up and made the wrong hire. I just don't think that's going to happen. I'm a believer in Seth Littrell. I think he's a really smart offensive mind. There's a lot of people out there that think he's going to be a head coach soon again anyways. So we'll see. And I think that this is a good hire. Is it the big splashy hire that a lot of people wanted? No, but that doesn't mean that it isn't going to work.
Brent Venables' job is to win football games, and he did it 10 times this year. I know that the two sting quite a bit for a lot of people, and that's kind of how we've gotten to this point. Oklahoma comes out in the college football rankings tonight, number 12, George. Not good news if you were hoping that Oklahoma would get to a New Year's Six Bowl.
Yeah, no, you got to get really to top 11, probably even top 10 to sneak in. And the big question for me is, at 9 was Missouri, 10 Penn State, 11 Ole Miss. And you look at those three teams, and not one of them has a better win than Oklahoma, who obviously has the win over number 7 Texas. And that's where it gets a little bit head-scratching why they're number 12. I think that you look at the quality losses of those teams. Obviously, Penn State lost to both Ohio State and Michigan. Those are their only 2 losses. Missouri, I believe, lost to who did they lose to? Alabama and Georgia. And I know Ole Miss lost to Alabama and Georgia. I'm not sure who Missouri. I know Missouri lost to Georgia. I'm not sure if that was their other loss. But anyways, you look at their resumes, and Oklahoma has a better resume than a lot of them, which makes it a little bit head-scratching as to why they're not ranked ahead, which is why they're going to get left out of the New Year's Six Bowl. And I tried to get on the CFP.
You got froze out.
Yeah, I did.
Froze out.
I got on the conference call tonight.
Oregon.
Yeah, tried to talk to the committee chair and didn't get my question in. So I don't know what's going on there, but you got to hope that somehow OU can jump up above Ole Miss or Penn State or Missouri this week, which is going to be tough to do. Maybe it can happen if SMU can go out and beat Tulane. Who
ironically, or not ironically, just it's kind of effed up. How are they not ranked in the top 25?
I don't know. It's really weird. And, their 2 losses are to Oklahoma and TCU. And so you would think those are somewhat decent quality losses when you consider where OU's ranked and TCU being a Power 5 program. But one of those things, again, if SMU can beat Tulane, maybe you can jump Ole Miss, because that is one of Ole Miss's ranked wins right now is over number 23, Tulane. So
Missouri's first loss of the season, a 49-39 loss to LSU in Columbia.
So
Jaden
again,
Daniels, guy that
it's
probably
a good
is going to
loss.
win the Heisman Trophy.
It's a good loss, right? But again, none of them have. I think the next best win of those 3 teams in front of OU is Penn State beating Iowa, who I think we can all agree Iowa is not a great football team. So at least not compared to say a Texas that Oklahoma beat. And again, if you want to get into New Year's Six, you probably need to root for Texas to win the Big 12 and get into the college football playoff.
Which I know is going to hurt a lot of people out there. The funny thing, real quick on Iowa, the prestigious offensive group that is the Iowa Hawkeyes. Have you seen the over-under for the first and second half this week?
Oh, gosh. I don't know.
Against Michigan in the Big Ten Championship?
Is it like 16?
The team total, I believe I saw, 0.5. Wow. They're not expected to score, I believe.
Iowa's not?
No.
I might take that bet.
Hey.
I think they'll score. Maybe
Oklahoma
I think they could get
fans, if you're mad about the hire, you could be happy that they didn't hire Brian Ferentz or Bobby Petrino.
Bobby Petrino.
Shout out all the Arkansas fans today. Jeez. It would be really funny if Seth Littrell and Joe John Finley rode in on motorcycles to the press conference at whatever time they have it this week. We are still awaiting official word, official announcement from the University of Oklahoma. I think that we both, don't let me speak for you, I would expect that to come on at some point on Wednesday.
Yeah.
I
agree. And
they make it official.
And I also wonder, too, if we end up getting a press conference this week. I know you said maybe you don't anticipate one.
I truly don't know.
I would think
don't know
we'll
how
get
that
introduced,
would work.
especially considering we've never spoken to Seth Littrell.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that they would let us talk to him as well as Joe John.
Sure.
In some capacity, and at least introduce them. And maybe also get a little, and it might be next week. Maybe they'll do that all with a bowl game press conference or something.
You mentioned that Oregon State had come open. Matt Wells, we believe, had interviewed for that job. It sounds like Bruce Feldman's reporting this evening. Oregon State's elevated defensive coordinator Trent Bray to head coach to take over Jonathan Smith, who is now making it $7.5 million in East Lansing.
Well, and I think that Matt would be a great hire somewhere. I think Matt Wells is awesome. I also think Oklahoma would love to keep him.
Sure.
And I think there's a lot of people that would love to have him in some role, whether that's an analyst still or something.
Do you think that would be a possibility if he were to, quote unquote, strike out in the head coaching realm, that he would come back and be an analyst for, what would this be, the 3rd season?
I think so. I think there's a good chance of that happening. We'll see again, maybe an offensive coordinator job opens up that he's really interested in. I would assume he'll be a candidate for some of those, but I do think that there's a chance he comes back if the right job doesn't come up.
Very good. Once again, thank you to everybody for joining us here on the Soonerscoop.com YouTube page. A special promo for YouTube watchers and viewers. $1, 2 months to Soonerscoop.com. That is $1, 2 months to Soonerscoop.com. A pretty good deal, as you know. We've done a lot of reporting on this over the last 48 hours since Sunday night when the news broke that Jeff Lebby would be taking the head coaching job at Mississippi State. It appears that search for an offensive coordinator or coordinators is coming to an end with what we have reported on Tuesday evening. Seth Littrell and John Finley going to be named co-offensive coordinators. And real quick before we get out of here, George, couple questions. Just a real quick hitters as we get out here if people are just joining us. Seth Littrell, play caller?
Yep, I think so.
Quarterbacks coach?
Yep.
Seth Littrell?
Yep. Seth Littrell will coach the quarterbacks, and I believe he will be calling the plays for Oklahoma. Obviously, John Finley will stick with the tight ends.
Sure, and we'll see how that all works out. I was talking to Carrie before we began. A lot of the air raid guys, quote unquote, they have called a lot of those guys call games from the sidelines. I wonder what Seth Littrell's preference would be. Does
I would bet
move?
he's in the box.
Sure. Okay.
I would bet he's in the box, and John will be the one signaling down on the field.
Sure, as they've done here over the course.
Yep.
And again, continuity is a big player in these hires. So, for George Stoia, I'm Eddie Radosevich. We will be back at some point this week. We're going to actually get Bob Prisbillo into studio
Hoops.
to talk about the
Top
OU basketball
25.
team that is top 25 for the first time under Porter Moser in his third season. Big game. Well, not necessarily. A fun game coming up on Thursday evening at McCaslin Fieldhouse against Arkansas Pine Bluff. And then Oklahoma kind of jumps back in to what is going to be a really interesting stretch with Providence and the Big 12 Big East Showdown, as well as Arkansas up in Tulsa at the BOK for their annual bash coming up, I believe, on December 5th or something around there. So I think that's good.
That's good.
Good stuff today, man. Really good stuff. Stay with Soonerscoop.com as more comes, unfolds here over the next couple of weeks, because it's not only the new offensive coordinators kind of taking shape, and hopefully we'll be able to talk to them, as George said, but transfer portal season. It is transfer portal season.
I will say, and again, subscribe to Soonerscoop.com because we've got all the info on this, but OU's already made some contact with some people out there that have announced their portal stuff. So pay attention to that, because I think OU's going to be pretty busy in the portal.
Very good. From the Soonerscoop.com studios, we'll talk to you next time.